Thank you. Okay, we'll call to order day 2 of our budget workshop. Mr. Manager, you're.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Your schedule tonight is to start with community services. We'll go through those, and then you'll put the education cost centers, and finally the public safety cost center.
Okay, and now before I let you go, Commissioner Budgie will ask me about something, so you can go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. There's something that I didn't pick up on last evening that I'd like to raise now. It's on the governing body Board of County Commissioners.
What page is that?
On page 30. For the past, since January, I've been tracking emails that we received from the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners and also from our contractor, the lobbyists. And I don't see, and the association costs us $5,400 a year, and the dues for the lobbyists are costing us $40,000 a year. And when I look at these emails, I really don't see any difference. And so I would like us to consider that one area we can save money is to do away with the professional services contract of $40,000. I really don't see any additional value to the county.
Okay, any other thoughts?
How many years have we had this contract?
I don't know, you know.
5
5 or 6.
5 or 6.
And I wrote the 4 emails that we received from North Carolina Association of County Government and also from the lobbyists. So I've compared the emails since January.
Well, I will say this, there are lulls with the lobbyists, and then there are times he does good work for us. So I mean, I'm just one of the board, but I'm good with him. I'll put it that way. I'm good with him because he does some good things for us, and it's just like with anything else you pay for. There will be times when you don't really get anything for it, and other times he hits home runs for you. So, well, like I say, I'm just one of the.
Yeah, I feel the same way, Chairman, that when we go to Washington, D.C., he can line things up for us that somebody else may not be able to do. So I think his services are good for what they are, and so I would like to keep that contract available.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
And our association lobbies is not going to lobby for our individual issues where our lobbyist does. I mean, they don't wade in the fights that we have down here. I don't think they do. Do you?
No.
I know they don't. So.
I was making my point based upon what the last activity for the past year. And the only difference he was able to do, which anybody can do, is pick up the phone and call an administrative assistant to set up an appointment. And that, to me, $40,000 seems kind of steep. But thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to comment.
Okay. All right, Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. We're starting on page 101 with cooperative extension. Roger Gaines is here tonight. You recall with cooperative extension, you have a contract with the North Carolina State University that you pay to provide those services, and you have their budget. It is roughly flat. They've got a few new things that are going on with the vehicle that they've got now. So there's a line item added in there for some fuel. But any specific questions, Rod can answer those. I saw him coming here. He is in the back. So.
Any questions? Okay.
Good.
I'm good.
Thanks, Rod. Soil and Water Conservation District on page 105. This is a local subdivision of the state government. They're an elected board, and you provide funding for them for the services they provide. Ann Williams is here tonight to answer any of the questions you may have about that. If you will look, their budget is actually less than their original, and just slightly above where they were actual in 14-15. Trying to think of anything out of the ordinary on this one. I know they've got a new employee, and they have some additional training in there for that, but I think that was about it. Otherwise, it was kind of status quo. But Ann can answer any of those questions that you may have.
Any questions from commissioners? Railroad?
I
Okay,
have one
go ahead.
question. Mr. County Manager, where did you, I see between the request and recommended, where did you cut the 35,000?
Where
Or is
did
it-
we, well, there was some, let's see. If you go down the list, we took a little bit out in different places. I'm trying to look for the big one. The professional services, I'm trying to think whether there was something in there that we backed out and moved somewhere else, but it wasn't. Help me remember that, Ann.
That was, if we did back it out, because it wasn't even supposed to be in there. It was
Right.
from something in the finance.
Okay.
All right, it's okay, thanks.
And that's the big pieces. I mean, otherwise, there's a.
Just little bits here and there.
500 here,
Okay.
1,000 maybe there in different places. Okay. Page 109 is youth services. This is a separate cost center that you have related to, that are geared toward youth services in Beaufort County. First is the JCPC program. That's the program that's funded through the North Carolina Department of Public Safety, Adult Correction, Juvenile Justice. There is a 10% match that the county provides for that. That was the meeting you had last Monday morning with them where they gave a presentation and talked about that. So the total cost on that is $167,628. The local 10% share on that is $16,762. And they use those funds, they distribute those funds amongst agencies, local agencies that are providing youth services, and they're held to a standard. They have to show that what they're doing and their success rates. And there's a board that's appointed to look after that. So you get very good value for the 10% that you put in. The Boys and Girls Club is a continuation of their budget from last year at $40,000. They actually asked for an additional $20,000, so you will see that additional $20,000 in the service expansion piece. As you recall, what we talked about in the continuation budget was we held folks flat, and then anything over and above, they were requested in on a service expansion. Pamela Copals is youth services as well. They're a one-on-one volunteer program. That's $2,000, so the total there is $209,628 for those three programs. If they'd answer any additional questions you may have about that. And then on page 111, you have your outside agencies. There's a total recommended funding for outside agencies of $374,873. And then on page 112, you have those individual outside agencies. You'll see in the 16-17 request, well, you'll see what they were provided this current year in the lineup. Then you'll see what they requested, and if there is a difference, then we took that additional under the recommended. If they asked for more, we pulled that out. So we held them flat, pulled it out, moved it to a service expansion. And then there are some that are brand new funding. So if anybody came in, if an outside agency came in and asked for new funding who wasn't formally funded by you in the prior budget year, their entire amount was put in as a service expansion. So you would hear from them next week on the 24th about why they're seeking funding and be able to answer questions from you about why they're asking for that. Any questions I can answer for you about that, about these?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
last year, there was some consideration about merging the two libraries. Did that go anyplace?
Actually, it did not. There was some fairly extensive conversation. I know when I was over with the city, we had that conversation with the county at the time. And it was when I got over here, we reached back and said, "Are y'all ready to do that?" Because one of the big issues that they were concerned about was the personnel and staffing. And I think, as I recall, we kind of worked out a plan where we would essentially allow it to go through attrition, and that as those people retired or left, we wouldn't fill them, and then they would kind of merge together. The conversations I had with the city after that, because what kind of drew that to a head was that Gloria retired, the director retired, so we reached out and said, this is the time if we want to do that, and essentially my understanding from them was that wasn't something that they wanted to continue to pursue. So.
I see they were originally requesting, what, almost $300,000.
There are some large requests in there this year from the city in regards to the library, the pool, the recreational, the senior center, and some of those areas.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Mr. Manager, I noticed that your recommended budget for 16-17 was zero for Bellhaven Recreation.
Yes, sir.
Why did you cut them out and fund everybody else?
The reason we took that out was because there was money that was owed to the county. If you'd like for us to put that back in, we'll put
Okay.
that back in.
All right,
But
I
there
got
was an
you.
outstanding invoice from the county to the town of Bellhaven. And so in order, I took that as an opportunity to recover money that was due the county.
Well, you did the right thing.
Yep.
So
How much do they owe us?
there's, if this isn't funded, there's still about $10,000. I think.
Any other questions? Okay, we can continue.
Economic development is your next item, 113. Martin is here tonight to answer any of those specific questions. You'll see that budget is less than the original budget from the current year. It is about $20,000, $26,000 above where it was in 14-15 actual. And the reason that is that was a year where you didn't have it wasn't fully funded for the staff position at the time. You were in transition with the director at the time, so that's why that's an actual number instead of a budgeted number. So you had some gap there. We've essentially done some cutting out of that budget from the original. We took it down about, what was that, $23,000. You'll see included in that budget is the skill center rent and the skill center maintenance and the utilities there. So that's a large portion of that budget because it's a two-person department. So a large portion of that, proportionally as compared to other departments, is for that facility. Any questions from us or from Martin? Okay. Page 115 is the planning department. You'll see that in 13-14, of course, that department did not exist. It was handled as a contract service under Mideast, and then in 14-15 it was established. So you see the layout there where they handle inspections as well as the planning side of the house. Their budget is at $461. It is less than the original budget. It's roughly about where they were in 14-15 actual. The big change you'll see there, if you look on page 116, they were originally paying for a couple of association things. There was $30,000 for the Mideast Commission that was actually being paid under planning that we pulled out and put under the board because that's, you're a member of the Mideast Association, or you're a member of that organization. It's not the planning department that's a member, it's you're then a member. You are a member. I'm sorry, that's not the one. That was also, let me back up. The Mideast Commission was paid the dues under that, but I believe that $30,000 was for professional services. Is that right? Mm-hmm. That's what that was. And we've reduced that because you've got a planner in-house, and so we've reduced that services to where we can stand that up on our own. Also, the Southern Albemarle Association, which is an advocacy group that advocates for the Albemarle region that you're a member of, was also being paid under that. And of course, we pulled that one out and put it under the board because that is, the county is a member of that organization, not the planning department. Again, part of what we were trying to do is get the numbers in the right place so we can historically look at it and get it right. So, they also include the sign maintenance program that is under their department. Any questions you have about planning? Seth's here.
Yeah, you may have said, but I didn't hear you.
Okay.
But the request for telephones was 1440, and we got 16,000. What's the deal on that?
That's another one of those where Seth's paying for everybody's phones overall in that building over there. It's kind of lumped in. That's one of the jobs we've got this year in going through and figuring out, making sure that the right phones are charged to the right place. So you won't see it in the other departments that sit over there, but you will see it all in his. And what we're going to do this year is figure it all out and move the money and get it in the right places.
I got you.
But it wasn't something we had time to be able to do and get into right now, so we just left it the way it was. But we're going to get those back in the right places.
Okay.
It's kind of like my budget with the copier, I think. So.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I don't know if I have this correctly, but in talking with Brian, there was a land use study done back in 09, 08, 07, that period of time?
Seth, you want to speak to that? There's a CAMA update that's done. If you can speak to that.
To the podium, please. Podium.
Seth, if you go up to
Podium.
To the podium.
The counties under all the coastal counties are required to have a CAMA land use plan. The county's most recent plan was adopted in 09, although I think the process began in somewhere around 02, and for whatever reason, took several years to finally get adopted.
Is there a period of time where we're supposed to update that?
Most folks try to do it every 10 years or so.
Is that a requirement or something that should be done?
It's something that should be done. I don't think CAMA has a steadfast policy on it.
They do or don't?
They don't, as far as I know. But I think believe that particular plan, like I said, it took so many years to get adopted that I think we're due for a new one first, something that's comprehensive and current.
Is it still a usable plan?
It is.
And Seth's got in his service expansion request, a request for $55,000 to hire a consulting firm to redo that countywide
Okay,
piece. So that's a service
Under
expansion
the
for you to
expansion.
look at if you want to do that.
Okay,
But it's
no, I'm
not
just-
included in his continuation budget.
oh, it's in a different area.
It's in the service expansion. of the-
Okay, all right, good, thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, continue.
All right, we'll move over to the education cost centers. Dr. Phipps is here. This is the public school system. You'll see that in the conversations we had in regards to the school system, we held the system flat with what they received last year. Now, there is a difference in the capital piece. My understanding was the traditional capital piece was about 1.5 million. Last year, there was an additional 300,000 that was added to that 1.5 for some specific work. So we took it back to the baseline, was our understanding, 1.5, and then we held them to the amount of money and current expense that they received this year as our starting point. In some conversations with board members, I mean, y'all were at the meeting that they presented their budget and had conversations about it. They obviously have some big demands, and I'm sure this is an extremely difficult budget for them. They're also under a lot of unknowns because the General Assembly is still kicking around things. I think a piece got released today by the House regarding their budget piece. So there's still some things that are up in the air. Part of that budget flexibility that we talked about with a couple of commissioners was instead of specifically putting a number on current expense and capital, that the number be the same, but give the board the flexibility to adjust that number within the total as to what needed to go to capital and what needed to go to current expense. There is a portion of that I think we included, there was a request, Commissioner Waters asked about the capital expenditures, so we included those with the school system. I need to put that together, and I think you have that just shows the capital expense piece, and then shows the amount of money in the article 40 and 42, the restricted funds that you're required to use for school capital. And from the county's perspective, actually we use every bit of that for debt service. And you have their presentation, you have their budget proposal and he'll be glad to answer any questions you have. I know y'all talked a little bit about this with the joint meeting, and so if there are any additional questions regarding that, he can answer them all right.
Commissioner Booth?
I was looking at the legislative suggested budget today, and it was recommending a raise for teachers and state employees. How much would that affect your budget as,
Can you answer at the podium, please?
or do you have those numbers now? We don't know whether it's gonna pass yet or not, but what I was looking at is, I know if your budget gonna be off a little bit with that increase in salaries for state employees and teachers. Do you have the numbers now? If that holds true, how much that would affect your budget dollar-wise, do you?
For the budget that we submitted to you all, we were projecting 5% for teachers, 3% across the board for other employees, which came out to about a 4% raise. What the House presentation was a 4% for teachers and 2%, so it will be slightly lower, but we don't know that exact amount yet, and we haven't seen what's going to happen on the Senate side yet. But for us, on the original proposal that we were planning on, it was a little bit over $700,000 is what that would be an increased cost to us just on that salary increase.
Good. I got you.
And we can pull those numbers. Lynn can take a look at that and take a look at our current number. That will change, obviously, as we do position cuts into next year, but we can do a calculation to get an idea of if it was 4% and 2%, what that would look like moving into next year.
Other questions?
If, I do. The way, correct me if I'm wrong before I get county manager.
Yes, sir.
We're estimating or recommending $14,733,000, correct?
Yes, sir.
Last year, the amended budget was $15 million. So, and you said included in that was $300,000?
Yes, that was the additional $300,000 that was my understanding was a one-time appropriation on top of capital to do a specific piece that I had understood that 1.5 was about where y'all had pegged the capital each year. So that's where we went back to that baseline of 1.5 million in capital.
They had, Mr. Chairman, what we had done is it was a kind of a last minute thing, and I believe Gary made the motion.
I did.
To give them the $300,000 to enclose the walls on the pod 1, 2, and 3 at Easton Elementary for the bathrooms, so that children would not have to go outside to use the bathroom, in those 12 classrooms would not go outside, and it was appropriated at $300,000. The last year, the previous year's capital had been $1,360,000, and we bumped it to $1.5 million last year. And so, which got you back up to a figure. When the recession came, the capital went down from 1.5 down to 1 million. And generally, when some of us tried to get the capital back to 1.5 million, and each year we had added something to it until this past year, it got back to 1.5 million, and which had been the traditional amount given to capital about the 4 years prior to the recession. And then during the recession it was cut, and then it's back up to 1.5 again. And that's the history of it, if you need to know.
Can I, Mr. Chairman? Dr. Phipps, you're estimating, what, a 4% salary increase?
Across the board, we
Across the board.
5% for teachers, 3% for all other employees.
And how do you intend to absorb that out of this $14 million? I guess my question is, what impact is that going to have on a 16-17 budget?
It's reflected as we've addressed it in terms of what we asked for in our overall budget request.
So, if I understand this correctly, what we're anticipating is layoffs?
Well, we're going to reduce our staff by 32 positions right now, and we're going to have to look at that again, depending on what the final result is in terms of dollar figures when this is all said and done. Our proposed budget that we presented to you all was with 32 positions cut. And just for the record, we're down 100 with those 32 positions. We're down 122 positions since 2009.
Mr. Chairman, of
So-
those 32 positions, at this point in time, and I believe you told us this at the meeting, and I don't have it. How many of those positions are unfilled at present, or will be unfilled at June 30th?
We hope we'll be able to take care of all of those positions through attrition and retirement and whatnot. Right now, we've got 6 that we're working with, and we hope through the attrition process by the end of the year, we'll be able to place those individuals without people losing a job.
So you're right, at this point in time, it does not look like you would have to riff anybody.
Well, at this point, there'd be 6 people that might be in that situation.
6 people.
But we're hoping that
Sure.
between now and the end of the school year, that we'll be able to absorb those.
Commissioner
You'll still have 122 positions down, at least,
From 2009.
from 2009. Now, what about I know there was discussion about increasing or decreasing access to the school buildings from a safety perspective. Are we going to be able to address any of those issues?
We've got those included in capital. We did a capital list that had safety and security items on it. And our goal moving into the upcoming year was to try to work on an area as visitors come into the building, to direct all the foot traffic into the office without being able to go throughout the buildings. But there's obviously a price tag associated with that. The bigger price tag was on enclosing the corridors where students move between buildings, and we felt like that was just too expensive to do in the upcoming year. We were going to do that in phases. So next year's focus was, what we planned on doing was looking at trying to direct traffic into the main office area and then allow people to have access after that. But, depending on what the final dollar figure is, we're going to have to look at capital versus local current expense and decide how we balance that in terms of our final.
So I guess my question is, at the recommended budget, will you be able to do any of those security upgrades?
It depends on where our board draws the line on how much we put at local current expense and how much we put on capital. According to what I've looked at, is if we took all the money based on what's proposed and put it at local current expense so that we don't cut any more positions, it leaves us with $166,000 to do capital. And our capital request was $1.8 million.
That ain't gonna work.
So what we have to balance then is security vis-à-vis layoffs.
If we put more money on capital, then the only way to make up that money on the local side would be additional positions.
Okay, now let's talk about safety of the students. What about the trailers? As I understand, some of them, over the past years, children have fallen to the floor. Some of the trailers, you got to be careful where you step. Are we going to be able to do any of those under this recommended budget?
They were separate items, not included in the 1.8.
So what I hear you saying, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, what I hear you saying is that the recommended budget here is going to have a major impact on security and safety, and also possibly on positions.
It could, depending on where we draw that line and how we allocate the money.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions?
One other thing, would that deplete your rainy day funds? Did you?
In terms of fund balance?
Yes.
No, we have not appropriated any fund balance in this year. There's not any clear guideline in terms of.
Didn't anywhere appropriate none.
Well, we'll have about $800,000 in fund balance that we've got left, but we feel like in terms of just cash flow and general operation, we don't want to drop much lower than that. But we've used that. I mean, we've done that for the last 3 years. We've allocated the year that we're currently in. We allocated $1,085,000, I think, is what we put in, and that's been the way that we've been able to move forward without taking any more positions than we've had to take.
I have one more question.
Go ahead.
If I may, Mr. Chairman. Cliff, you may not be able to ask this question, but I want to put it on the floor. In one of the emails I received from the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners, there's a bill that's been filed, H1111, and it talks about the county, if charter schools come in and request, would authorize charter schools to request capital outlay funding from the Board of County Commissioners. Are you aware of this or have any insight into this?
I've had lots of discussion about that at the state level.
Would there be funding coming from the state, or do we have to take it out of our
It would
budget?
be out of what's existing at this point.
Out of our budget?
They'd be required to come to you. My understanding is they have to have 50% of their student population has to come from the county that they're approaching, but they would come before you just like we do in terms of capital, asking for capital. It gives them permission to request. It doesn't require funding.
So just to clarify, under the current process or the current legislation, there'd be no funds from the state. We'd have to fund.
Additional funding?
Yes,
To my understanding, my knowledge, it will be out of the local funds, just like we come.
because that's what I've heard too, that they wouldn't be giving us any money, but we would have to fund these. All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I don't think you have to fund them. I think it's the decision
We may.
at the local.
We may.
That's right.
Oh,
Make
I'm
it
sorry.
clear, Dr. Phipps, that you're not getting capital funding from the state now.
That's right.
You're not getting any.
That's right.
The only capital funding you get would come from the Beaufort County Commission.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Dr. Phipps.
Your next item, next cost center is in the community college on page 119. Dr. Tansey and Mr. Nelson are here. If you have any questions regarding that, you'll see that the same kind of philosophy that we had with the public school system, we applied to the community college system. And that was, we looked at what their funding was last year, both in capital and current expense, and budgeted that same amount, recommended that same amount, with, again, offering the flexibility between the boards to figure out where they use that money between the two line items. So I'll certainly let them answer any questions they have regarding it.
Any questions from
Had your
any
views with
commissioners?
them, so.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
one of the things that you discussed when we were out at the college having our joint session was, I'm trying to remember, was it 50,000 in there for the Snyder piece? I call it Snyder piece.
Yes, sir, the energy study.
Right.
Yes, sir, 50,000 in the current operating budget, correct?
Is that something you're going to be able to do with this?
No, sir. We'll have to cut that.
I'm sorry, I was talking to the other commissioner. Could you repeat that question? Thank you.
It related to the energy audit. The figure was 50,000.
Yes, sir, correct.
Okay.
I can't remember what the potential savings is, but it was
It was, I don't remember the number off the top of my head myself, but over, I think the total construction cost that we were looking at was somewhere about 1.2 million that we were looking at trying to figure out a plan to be able to do over a 3 to 5 year phased-in program with that 50K.
that was it.
Any other questions?
One question. At this recommended budget, besides the energy, is there anything else you're going to have to cut out?
I'm going to more than likely cut some more of the capital. We had requesting 50,000 in paving repairs, 150K in parking lot paving the building 12, some upgrades in buildings 4 for the electrical department. Those are probably the items that I'm going to cut.
What about any layoffs?
No, not to my knowledge.
On the bond issue,
That's well past.
which I think you're going to realize 5.6 or 6.
6.5, correct.
6.5. In that bond issue, I guess you have to go into the state and tell them what you're going to use the money for?
Correct, yes, sir.
Can any of that money be used for some of these projects that you were anticipating?
Right now, what we're going to, the number one project we've got on the state's docket is what we're calling the ADA and security.
Yep.
And then basically trying to upgrade the outside infrastructure for Americans with Disability Acts. And also, there's going to be some security items in there, like the outdoor speaker system we had asked you for previously, and also the door locks that we had asked you for previously. Those will be included in that ADA and security package. And then the second one was going to be the driving pad, that filling out the rest of that emergency training complex to include one classroom added for the emergency services training. So that's right at $5 million for that project.
So you'll be able to take care of some of the security issues.
Very minor, yes, sir.
What does the $5 million include now?
It includes
Specifically.
the driving pad itself is right at $3 million with the grading, because it has to be the DOT road standards. And then it's going to include a storage building for their equipment. It's going to include a classroom building as well.
How many classrooms?
I think it's going to be 2 classrooms and then office space in there as well.
got some, Commissioner Booth.
I was reading in the, somewhere in our legislature this year, so don't start spending too early because they're trying to get their hands on that money as we speak. And so,
Yes, sir. Well,
so I don't think it's gonna pass, but don't turn no dirt right yet.
oh, we can't. We can't even start trying to even think about, letting contracts till after August is what we've been told. Now, they've told us we could go ahead and look at our design teams and go ahead and line that up and put out the RFPs, but we can't spend a dime until after 1 August. And they still have not given us the cash flow plan that they've got from the state. So,
I don't give up hope on them yet. They've been scratching and digging at that money.
Commissioner Green.
I did, you about halfway answered my question right
Okay.
then. I just wanted to know what the time frame was from the time you set the process in motion to the time that you started receiving the money.
Correct, and that's what we're looking at right now, and this is just in general terms, and we don't know exactly what the state, what we're finding out, there's a lot of people that are up there now weren't there when the 2000 bond came through, so they're kind of reinventing the wheel a little bit as they go forward. But the general timeline is for us to let those design contracts in the August timeframe and then start that design process and have it ready to start that first project in January of 17 is what we're looking at. And then we're staggering the other project for the driving pad 1 month offset from that.
One other thing, that driving pad, which I think is a good idea, the classrooms and office spaces, that's just about going to do 6.5 million, is that correct?
Between the
Pretty
ADA,
close.
there's going to be about 800,000 left over that we're looking at, because we're meeting with our board the 2nd of June it is, and we're going to talk to the property board there about upgrading Building 4 to house the electrical program with the mechanical and the welding and putting it all in one building.
Has anybody did a study on whether we really needed those 2 classrooms? Do you have enough space out there that you may be able to house those classrooms somewhere else?
We normally do a study, I think, about once a year on utilization. Actually, the public school system does that for us. But what we really want to do is have all of that training complex right there together, so the EMS guys, the LET guys, and they can do it all without having to go, halfway across campus. You get one classroom here, one classroom there.
Okay.
So we felt like it was better for their training to be all together.
Thank you.
Mr. Booth.
On this driving pad, I know it's gonna cost you right much money. Have you sat down and figured out how much money you're gonna receive from other counties for using?
Well, we've guesstimated that, if you want to call it that, but I don't have that figure in my head. It's kind of hard to say. We know that other schools in the area do not have one, and so, we've had interest as far away as, 3 or 4 counties out beyond our service area that have had interest in it.
Is there any other counties in our captured area thinking about doing a pad besides us?
Not to my knowledge,
Pitt,
right now,
Martin, no.
unless Dr.
It
King.
says no.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
No
that,
way.
they'll come here.
Craven looked at the possibility, but I've heard no more.
Okay.
But it's not in their bond package.
Okay. So we'll be able to get some
Draw.
funds for, okay.
And the same thing with the fire training facility as well, too. We'll draw from other areas, and we've had interest as far away as Durham for those types of classes.
Thank you.
Okay.
I got one more thing.
Go ahead.
Just a quick question.
Sure.
The monies that you receive from the outside people coming to use our pad, you prepared to use that for maintenance of the driving pad and things of that nature, and keeping up that emergency buildings and the fire building at the same time?
We will put those in what we call institutional funds, because we keep state, county, and institutional separate, and then we can use those funds to help support it. Now, whether it would be enough to completely do it all is another question.
Well, you won't really know that until you find out how many
Correct.
people is going to be using
Exactly.
the class.
But yeah, we will put those in institutional funds and be able to support some maintenance on that.
Okay, thank you. That's all I got.
Is there anything you're postponing that is going to cost us more in maintenance in the long term?
Probably the biggest thing is the paving repairs. I mean, we had an engineering firm come out last year and basically gave us some guidelines on things that we needed to do and what areas we needed to work on first. And then also, I would venture to say that the 50,000 for that electrical energy study, we could be saving a lot of money if we did those plans. And I think we were talking about looking at doing maybe $250K a year over a 3 to 5 year period. And mainly the biggest things that we need to replace are lighting, because the lighting that we have is outdated and uses a lot of energy. And of course, we've also talked about, and that's inside and outside lighting. The continued improvement on the HVAC controls and logging those into the computer control systems. Those are probably the biggest areas that we could save dollars on, but we've got to have the money to be able to make the replacements.
And what does that add up to? 75, 50, 125? I'm probably missing something.
And which one are you looking at?
I'm looking at the upgrades. On
Oh, the
heating
upgrades?
system and the controls. Isn't that what you mentioned?
Correct.
And then the paving repairs you mentioned?
Right, there's 50K for that. The parking lot for Building 12 is 150. I think what we were looking at cutting out of the capital area was going to be 250K, and then 50K out of the current expenses.
I guess what I'm asking for, what's the total price?
Total price?
Total cost you're looking, that you really need in order to decrease maintenance, improve utilization?
300,000 is
About
what we
300?
would have to do in order to do what our property board
Okay.
requested us to do.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
You're into public safety cost centers. The first one is the sheriff's office. Chief Rose is here tonight to discuss that with you. And of course, you'll recall that you have both. You have three of those actually. You have the administrative and operations side. You have the jail. And you have the communications piece. You'll recall that in the communications piece, this budget does recommend the funding of the EMD positions that this board had put in play a couple years ago. That process went through, so it does fund those additional positions to finalize the EMD program. Those are the only additions that are in the sheriff's office for personnel. And you recall in our message we talked about that there was and I think Charlie will talk a little bit about that in his presentation, about the numbers that were presented last year on the personnel side. There was a miss on those, so they kind of started out in the hole.
Chief,
Yes.
I couldn't wait no longer. I'm so excited to hear your report from last year. About this time, we were sitting here talking about that $1 million you almost saved, so I'm looking forward this time.
I'm excited that you're excited.
Chairman, are we ready? Gentlemen, thank you for having me tonight. I've got a brief presentation, and then I want to be able to answer any questions that you have. So we'll get started.
Hit that light, Chief.
First off, we all know that the budget process does not end. That is a year-round event. We spend just as much time trying to end a budget as we do trying to get into our next budget. A couple of the conversations that I've had with Commissioner Booth have been very interesting over this last year, and I'm pleased to say that as tough as it has been this year, we are still going to be giving money back to the county at the end of this year.
Good job, brother.
You know, with everything in us, if just a reminder that we've moved over $400,000 within our own budget after the budget was approved in this year, and we're still going to be having a surplus. And we're going to continue to operate in that way. Try to stay within our lines all the time. The sheriff's budget is built by division leaders, either lieutenants or directors of their respective division, with the guidance that the sheriff and I provide. And that is a year-round event, you know, through trainings, through things that happen in the field, through conferences and information that we see, through networking with other agencies. So the presentation that we give once a year is developed year-round. After all of that information is assembled, it's put together, and there is a cut before it goes to the county manager. The information that we receive from from everybody that we get, we make a binder each year. And if you need a snapshot of our past, present, and future, it's through our budget books. So these are things in their educational documents for the people that put them together. And each year, the county manager receives a binder just like this. And that's with all the justifications, everything that we're asking for, and everything that we've asked for the last couple of years. The county manager, the CFO, and the chief deputy collaborated and negotiated the number that you see before you. That's one of those things that in the past there really hasn't been a lot. There's just been the budget gets turned over and then it gets cut, and then we sort of deal with what we have. But the way that the sheriff and I look at it is that we understand that the money comes from one pool. We understand that. We know that we're not going to get everything that we request, but what we do get, we want to be able to, buy some of those groceries and pick the groceries out so we can better utilize the funds that we do receive. So we just want the option and the opportunity to be able to move some of those funds around that are approved so we can better utilize the funds that we get. After the manager's budget was negotiated, I was made aware of revenue shortfall that was no fault of the sheriff that needed to be addressed. I was asked to find cuts within our own budget, and I was told that other county agencies would be asked to do the same. So with that being said, we cut over $450,000, and most of that was out of equipment, computer hardware and software, as well as the funds to maintain equipment. These cuts were requested, or these cuts are why the requested budget and the recommended budget are the same, because they were negotiated after the manager received the information on the budget. At the regular commissioners meeting on 5/9/16, the county manager presented his recommended budget to the board. This presentation that you're seeing was developed after that meeting on the following assumptions. The recommended budget appropriates $919,975 in general fund balance. The recommended budget increases the ad valorem tax by 2 cents from 53 to 55 for each $100 of assessed property valuation. The additional 2 cents will generate approximately $1.2 million in annual revenue. Historically, tax increases are not imposed on even years. I'm sure that's just coincidental, but that's when commissioners are elected. The aforementioned assumption means that the gap within the budget is not $919,975, but more like $2,119,975, and that doesn't include the expansion items. The assumption that I made and presented to the sheriff was that the shortfall is not going to be taken care of by tax increase, which means that probably there's going to be a mix between cuts and the use of the fund balance, and that in the past the board has been not willing to go over 1.5 to 2 million in fund balance, so we know that. So now I'm going to put some changes in from the information that you have. The variance in the 2016-2017 budget, not counting the payroll variance, just in the sheriff line, $461,544, that affected our budget, is a reduction of $149,086 lower than the 2015-16 budget. Now, we did these cuts for several reasons. We know that times are going to be tight throughout the county, and we also understand that we are the largest agency that's completely funded by the county. So that's one of the reasons why we're doing what we're doing. The other reason is that we are looking forward to adding the 5 positions to complete EMD. And if nothing else, this should show how important that is to the sheriff and to the sheriff's office. The jail's budget. In 2016-27, jail budget variance is a reduction of $200,374. That's when you add the payroll variance of $129,913 from last year. All contingency funds have been removed from this budget. That is all contingency funds. That is safekeeping, that's professional medical, that is meals. Usually the 3 lines that cover budget shortfalls in the sheriff's side and communication side have been cut out of this budget. The 911 center, there's no way that we can stop a variation in this one. Or variance in this. We've got to get those 5 positions. The variance of a total of $425,914, including a payroll error of $76,454, is driven by the addition of those 5 personnel. And then additional funds are required just to cover the other parts of the budget that we have not been able to fund in past years. The funds that we would have to move over, which is historically about $150,000, which would have to be moved from the sheriff line or the jail line to cover losses in the communications line. That has to be taken care of. So we'll start off on the right-hand side on this. The variance 2017 overall on the sheriff's side is $312,458. On the jail, it's a reduction of $75,461. And the 911 center, there's a uptick of $425,914 for a total of $662,911. Now, if you look on the left, if you take out the payroll error that we had in the last year's budget, we show a reduction of $149,086, a reduction of $200,374, and then the addition of $349,460. So if you take out the variance of the payroll error, we're funding the 5 positions. We're covering the cost of the uptick in communications, and we're doing that by cutting the sheriff's budget and the jail budget to cover those costs. So the only thing that we're asking the county this year is to cover what we see as the error that was put in last year's payroll budget.
That was 76,000.
No, sir, that was more than that. That was close to the $662,911.
I just misheard you.
And that covers salaries and the benefits that went along with salaries. I mean, that was a big hit. You know, fortunately in talking, that was something that was one of the first things that I hit the county manager up when he became our county manager, was that there was a lot of things that we were going to try to take care of in our budget, but the payroll variance was one thing that we couldn't do. You know, we could absorb a lot of things in our budget. We tried to absorb, and we did absorb the $450,000 that we moved, but there was no way that we could find over $1 million, which is what we would have to do over that. And I've looked through our budget over and over and over again to try to find where the mistake came from, and the only thing that I can come up with was that I think a snapshot was taken, like the county manager said, and I think that was butted up with actual payroll numbers historically, where historically we would have 6, 7, or 8 openings throughout the course of the year. So you have the bad snapshot, you put that up to a number that had 7 or 8 openings throughout the course of the year, and you get reassurance even though the reassurance was wrong as well. You know, so that is what I propose through this presentation, and I've got some more information as well, if I could entertain you with that. One of the questions that I received for over about 18 months now was, what are we spending money on? Each year, in the budget booklet that we provide to the county from the sheriff's office, we provide 2 spreadsheets. We provide the documentation that the county asked for, and then we provide another spreadsheet that we actually use through the course of the year to keep up with our funding and what we're purchasing. The information that you see is color-coded. Brown would be for patrol. Red is for criminal investigators. Green for narcotics investigators. Yellow for office staff. I want to say there's another color in there somewhere. Blue is for IT. Each and every request that comes through our office for the budget goes through this process and is put on the spreadsheet. What I've done for you this year is that I've showed you the full numbers of everything that was requested from the beginning, and then you see the request that's made through the county as well. So you see what was requested, and then you see the cuts that have been made along the line. And I hope that answers a lot of the questions that you would have over what we are spending the money on, just in any business. And the sheriff's office is a business. We have an enforcement side, and there is definitely a business side, because the only thing that's free is the work ethic. You got to pay for the work. Does anyone have any questions on any particular lines or anything that I can offer more information on?
The bulletproof vest, how many of those do you have? You have one for every officer, is that correct?
That is correct.
And that's 70, how many officers you have?
We have 56 sworn officers.
And that's how many vests you have?
Everyone has a vest assigned to them. We do. We actually have more vests than that. We have the vest that is worn underneath the shirt that is relatively light. And then we have several rigs that the vests are heavier. So if we're making an entry into a residence, that will have vests that have a little bit more protection that can take from a rifle shot as opposed to a handgun.
These are really good vests?
They are good vests. We would figure out a way to buy the vest that we need. Now, the biggest question on the vest that I get is a lot of people, they have assumptions. They think if you buy one, it'll last forever. I mean, vests, they do have a shelf life. The material that the vests are made out of, the Kevlar and other newer materials that make them lighter and thinner, they do have a shelf life. And most recommendations from the manufacturers say 5 years. And we do not have vests on people that are older than 5 years. So with the rotation that we try to do, I mean, it's simple on that. We have about 60 law enforcement officers. We try to replace 15 a year. So we can get to the point where everybody is staying in a vest and we're not having to buy 40 or 50 vests in 1 year in a crisis situation. Now, all of those vests come out of the uniform line. Now, you've seen and through yesterday's discussion, we have had expansion. We have had expansion in our office. We have more school resource officers than we did in the past. We have more investigators than we had in the past over the last couple of years, but our uniform line has stayed pretty much the same, if not has gone down. So there's a lot of things that are covered out of the uniform line, including vests that are $700 a piece, out of a fund for 60 deputies, roughly, that is $70,000 a year. So we're spending, and we're trying to stretch that dollar amount just like in every other line that we have, as far out and as thin as we can, and then we try to make assumptions and guesses throughout the year, and if we get halfway through or 3/4 of the way through, and we made an assumption that we were going to spend more on this side and we need more over here, then we would like the flexibility to move that around to take care of what our needs are based on the priorities that we have for life safety.
Do you have any extra vests, or y'all just buy them from Maine?
Vests are pretty, I mean, it's just like having a suit, just like having anything else. You can have 3 or 4 people and they all need to be fitted a different way.
The reason I asked, I read an article that there was going to be some funds to make sure that police officers all of them have bulletproof vests.
We have utilized and we have used the Bulletproof Vest Partnership for years, and we're going to continue to do that. And what that does is that for agencies our size, for Tier 1 counties, is that we purchase the vest at full price, we turn in the information, and most years we can get half of that money back. Okay. And then once that money is turned in, we turn it back into the county, and it goes back to the general fund. It doesn't go back into our account, but it goes back to the general fund. But the way that we look at it there is that, county dollars are county dollars. I'll ask for it now. If you can't give it to me, I'll ask for you again later, and maybe you can.
Mr. Chairman, the uniforms itself, about how long does a uniform last from start to finish? Till the time you throw it away.
I'll be as polite as I can on this. It ranges from person to person. There are some people that can wear a uniform and keep their set of allotted uniforms for 2 years, and everything is fine. And then there are some deputies that 1 year is about all. We just like everything else, there's, uniform means something different to a lot of people. For our agency, uniform is pretty important. And it's not just that you're wearing the same shirt. There's a certain look that goes along with it. And studies have shown, and there's a lot of things that go into it, we can get into psychology all we want to, is that if a deputy shows up on a scene and looks sharp, looks like they know what they're doing, then they get the first 15, 20 seconds. Now after that, the person can form their own opinion on what's going on. But we try to get into that as much as we can, and we want to give every deputy that we have the benefit of the doubt with the public. We want to have a certain look. We want it to be professional. We want it to be clean. We want it to be sharp. And so we're not going to let anybody start to get to the point where their uniform looks like it's bad before we replace them. But, say for instance for me, I'm pretty easy on uniforms. I'm pretty easy on equipment. You know, so if we're allotted for a year, I probably get 2 uniforms a year. I make sure that my dress uniform is good. I make sure that I've got 2 that look good. Then I've got 2 that might be a year old that still look fine. But then again, I also have the flexibility that the sheriff allows me to wear pretty much what I want to, so I don't have to wear a uniform every day. But all of those things are considered for case by case, person by person when they're trying to get refitted.
Good. Thank you.
I know you was, at one time, probably, you remember we was having a problem with people in the 911 center and stuff like that. You still having that turnover there, or is it fully staffed?
We, you know, for a lot of reasons, and a lot of those I can't really explain, we've been right at full for almost a year and a half. We've made great strides, and that's both detention and communications. You know, we've tried to do everything that we can to make the atmosphere a good atmosphere to work. We want to get it where people want to show up to work. And I believe that the professionalism has increased over the last year and a half in both the communications and the detention center, and I think it shows in the level of detention that we have. Right now we have 3 openings agency-wide. They're in detention, and we've got 4 people in background that we had applications in immediately as soon as they opened, and we're going to be ready to fill those positions. We've got 2 slated to start on the 1st, and another 2 that's slated to start on July 1st. So we're staying full, and things are going good for us right now. If I can, since I made some changes, I wanted to make sure that you gentlemen had the changes in your books. If you like, if I can go through the numbers individually now.
Yeah, if you would do that, I'd appreciate it.
On page 124, the admin and operations line.
Where is it?
I can't find it
You're
either.
at 124, we're looking at law enforcement supplies. About halfway down through your page. We're moving that from 48. We're moving that from 48,000 to 40,000.
Under requested,
So you knocked 8 off of it.
Knocked 8 off of that one.
is that under 16, 17 requested? Is that what-
Yes, sir.
Actually, it's under recommended.
Well, that's,
You gonna knock that
Sure,
down to
Bill.
42?
Yeah, that's what they're doing, based on what we recommended.
Okay, so you're going from 48 to 40?
Forward.
yes, sir. Law enforcement supplies covers a lot of different things. Ammunition is the biggest cost driver in that. We usually buy about $15,000 worth of ammunition. This year, we tried to move that up to $20,000 just because it's more expensive to buy rounds than it was several years ago. And we still try to qualify at least twice a year, which is, it's a little bit more than what the minimum standard is, but it's not a lot when it comes to training with firearms for a law enforcement agency. With what we do, we can't require it, but we encourage very highly for the deputies to seek training on their own and for them to shoot more just to,
So you, with the money you're requesting, you do it twice a year,
we do.
and you have enough rounds to do that?
We do. The line right underneath that in employee development, that was actually a new line that was created that merged travel reimbursement and training costs. Moving from 32 to 30, that is going to make us where we're going to have to shrink those lines, and we're going to have to pay close attention. But when you make cuts, I mean, if you're not cutting personnel, you have to cut equipment and training, so that was where that came in. So 32 to 30. On law enforcement information, moved from 75,000 to 70,000. That covers buy money for the narcotics unit. That's a fund that we've been trying to get up to $100,000 for the last, I don't even know how long. Our narcotics investigations unit is the best in the state.
You went to what on that?
You dropped that 75 to what?
From 75,000 to 70,000. And that constitute buy money.
Is that sufficient?
That, our guys do the level of work of the level of funding that we provide. If we provided $150,000, then they would provide $150,000 worth of work on these funds. With how we go right now, we have to slow down. We have to slow down the production, the level of cases that we are doing in about April with the funding level that we are on the money that we have. You know, just not to get into too much of, as far as operational
I
details.
know that.
You
I'm
know.
trying to be careful, I'm asking my question.
Our guys have to slow down.
We can have a sidebar conversation,
We have to slow down at about April.
April.
I would love for them to be able to work on through the year. Now, each year, I mean, just like anything else, just like this year, if there are funds that are available that I can move into that fund to offset and to get them money where they can keep going, then we do. And but that's for what we're doing. That's a necessary.
Chief, could I ask you a question on this? When you, and this buy money, is that just used for our county, or, you know, sometimes y'all have these covert operations that you go to other counties, do you use that money for other counties, or is
Well,
it
we
just
do.
used?
We
I
do
mean,
use it.
You might not can answer then on.
Well, here's what I'll say on that.
Okay.
Is that the way that we feel is that crime that affects Beaufort County is a Beaufort County crime. Without a doubt, more drugs are brought in to Beaufort County through Greenville, and right now through Pamlico County, than any other direction. So if we start something, there's been plenty of times where a drug operation has started with a cold traffic stop on River Road by one of our traffic guys, by one of our, and I say traffic, our traffic team is composed of patrol deputies, the 911 answers. They stop somebody, has some dope on them, our narcotics investigators get involved, it leads up, leads up, leads up. We might be in Greenville working on a person who supplied that drug to get them into Pitt County, or to get them from Pitt to Beaufort County, and we have utilized buy money to take that next level down. And our guys are, our guys are really good at what they do, and you know that we get comfortable and complacent here in Beaufort County. You know, you watch the news, and in every direction from Beaufort County, every county around us is having to deal with problems that we are not having to deal with in Beaufort County that much. Now, I'm not saying we are not crime-free. If there's a crime that can occur on this planet, it is occurring in Beaufort County. It is. But the levels of that crime are not as much than and not just Pitt and Craven, but Washington, Martin, Hyde, Pamlico. And there are many reasons for that, but one of the reasons for that is the enforcement efforts of the Sheriff's Office. We are the most dynamic law enforcement agency in Beaufort County. We have been for a long time, and we're going to continue to be.
Is any of that money, when you go to our associations and stuff, the number one drug now is prescription drug.
Absolutely.
Is any of that money used for buying, buy money of
Yes.
cars that use?
I can't give a percentage, but I'll say most cases. You know, our drug enforcement, our narcotics investigators, they had over 350 felony cases. I'm not talking about charges. I'm talking about cases. Over 350 last year, right? A very high majority of those cases, we're talking 90, 95%, there was a prescription diversion element in those cases. You know, if 10 years ago, if somebody would told me that one of the biggest problems we would have in Beaufort County was heroin, I would have laughed in your face. But it is. Now, heroin's one of the biggest issues that we have. That's on the illicit side. Now, it's also illicit to carry prescription drugs like hydrocodone or Percocet if you don't have a prescription for that. Well, if you can't get heroin, but you can get hydrocodone, they're both opioids, they're both narcotics, then they can interchange with each other. That's a huge problem that we have in Beaufort County, and we're fighting it every day.
Let me ask you a question. You don't have to answer it if you think it's, well, sometimes you don't want to answer these questions. Are the pills coming in from outside the county?
Yes, they are, to a certain extent. They're coming from everywhere. I mean, if you just think about the number of people that get prescription medication, that they get it, and it's absolutely legal. There's a lot of prescriptions out there, and it's not just narcotics, it's anti-anxiety medications, it's everything, the gamut. You know, we've got people at high schools, we've got kids in middle schools that are going through their grandparents' medicine cabinets and taking whatever they can find. You know, I'll take 5 or 6, they'll never miss it. They're taking it to schools. They're using it, they're selling it. You know, it's everywhere. Last year there was more prescriptions for anti-anxiety, antipsychotic, and for pain medication than there are people in this country. You know, so it's out there, and it's out there every day.
All right, continue with your budget.
Okay. Next line, law enforcement information. Let's see, did I cover that one already?
No.
All right, one line down, I think there might have been. Okay, equipment purchase, one line down. We're moving that from 135,000 to 90,000. Biggest jumps in that is that last year we bought 20 body cameras. And with body cameras, just like in the presentation that I gave last year, the cameras, they are expensive, but the real cost comes in the storing of the information. You know, for each camera that we bought 20 last year, our information that we had, the servers and the hard drives were fine. We wanted to add 20 more. We want to get to the point where we've got full implementation. If you're a sworn deputy, and I would like to have body cameras in the detention center. I would like everybody that deals with the public in an enforcement effort to have a body camera eventually. We bought 20. We had in the initial request, we wanted to get another 20, but we needed to have another server and more space to back up so we can hold that information for the 90 days that is requested. We cut out the purchase of cameras, so therefore I was able to cut out the server that we needed to back that up. So that's where you see the 135 to 90. A couple spots down, you see rental equipment. That went from $33,000 to $30,000. That goes into cut from funds that are used for surveillance vehicles that could be rented throughout the year.
You said they went to 30?
33 to 30. And then probably my least favorite cut out of everything is capital outlay vehicles. That went from $360,000 to $242,211.
Run that by me one more time, what the cut was.
The number now is $242,211.
It's 118,000.
118,000.
That got me my last 118, so I could put a 0 on that board. In the detention center, we're dropping safekeeping, which is the second to last line on the page, in the 4320 sheriff jail line, from 150,000 to 135,000. Safekeeping has historically been one of those that we try to save as much of that as we can. We only send people away if we need to. Historically, we've been able to stay around $100,000 of that. About 2 years ago, when the lights went out in the jail, that number went from the $100,000 that was recommended and requested to over $600,000 for that month and a half that we had to house our inmates elsewhere. So that's why we tried to keep that line with a little bit of cushion in it. We've taken all the cushion out. 100,000 is the historic trend of what we've used. Christina Smith, who does facilities, she's requested over the last couple of years that if we have any major construction or improvements that need to go in the jail, that she would like for us to move the inmates to another facility so they can have full access to the building. I told her that we would do that if we could, and that's the additional $35,000 in there. She asked for a week, 5 days. I figured that meant 10, so that's what was put in there. That right now, with the number of folks that we have in our jail, if I had to send them away for 10 days, it would cost about $40,000, or in between 35 and 40. So that's what constituted that change. And that's all I have.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, I just want to clarify, so if I may, for the sheriff's office, in the book, it's $1,862,000, it's now $1,847,000, based upon the sheets.
Yes, yes, sir. That's correct.
Communications, 1168 to 1170.
On communication side, there was actually a little difference between the
2,000.
requested and the recommended. The line needs to be the requested amount. Needs to hold firm on that. I think there was only about $2,000 that was off.
2,000, that's all.
Yeah, that was
And on-
that was a typo on mine.
Okay, and on the jail, it's 1.847, went down.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Oh, you know.
Chief, I know those things that we talked about on those vehicles, I know we're not gonna be able to look at it this year, but did you get some numbers on that? Those monsters?
Yes, sir.
I'll see you one day when we talk about those numbers.
Okay, that was actually, that's a good conversation for us to have. And this budget that is presented, we've talked about it with the sheriff. This is it. This is our budget for this year. We had some items that we had listed on as expansion. One of those was mobile CAD is what it would be, that would have the deputies that are on the road would have instant access. As soon as the telecommunicator would type information into their computer system, it would be available for the deputies. To include AVL, the automatic video locator, that would be a great piece of information for the telecommunicators as well as for the deputies that are working on the road, as well as any other first responders that we could add to and attach to that. And then, the same issues and the same problems that we've had for years, we have now. We have needs as far as weapons, and so far the weapons are, I can still change rifles over from the 15-year-old rifles that we have to the rifles that we need moving forward with the budget that we have. Cars are always going to remain an issue until we can get to the point where there's at least an understanding between the commissioners and the sheriff's office on how that needs to go. And I think that hopefully over this last year that we've been able to show a little bit that if we can turn over some of those cars before they get 185 to 200,000 miles, not only are they safer when we're turning them in, but we can actually recoup a little bit more money for the county. The community college, they need cars every year. If we can get to the point where we have an ebb and a flow where it's just understood. I mean, we have 67 vehicles, not counting our military vehicles, 67 vehicles in our fleet. And all of those are very important for us. And, we talk about the needs of infrastructure in Beaufort County. Well, our cars are an infrastructure need. I mean, they are definitely a capital cost. And they're a capital cost that, we don't have to drive a building to a call. But I've got deputies that are out there that we're putting in harm's way every day in vehicles that are not as safe as what they need to be. So that's always going to be an issue. And, as much as I hated to do it, I put a cut on some of the vehicles, and we'll scrap and claw to see if we can get up to an acceptable number until we get to the point that we do have an understanding on a certain number that is going to be replaced year in and year out without having much question about it.
How many vehicles in this budget?
Right now, there's I could probably get 7
I figured 8.
out of the budget. Yes, I think my math was 6.7. I can't have 0.7 cars. But, this last year, we kept everything that we could keep out of a car that we surplused. So if we can purchase a vehicle and use lights, use sirens, use anything that, some we can, some we can't. That equipment has been in a vehicle for 7 or 8, 9 years, just like uniforms. Some deputies are easy on equipment, some are tough on equipment. But we're going to utilize as much of that equipment that we pulled out of the old cars and the new cars. And if I can get to 7 vehicles, it's not ideal, but if I can get to 7, I've already been talking with the chief financial officer about the possibility of using some maybe drug asset forfeiture money to purchase a car or two over the course of the year to get us back to that number, which some people remember. I guess I've been cursed with a memory, a very good memory, and my number's always been 10. I know the sheriff might have said 6, 7, 8, 9. My number's always been 10. I mean, I just go back to experience and working with the fleet, the number of vehicles that we have. If we can get to the point where we can do 10 a year and flip those over, then we're going to be able to do a lot better things for other agencies, including our guys. Will be a lot safer for our guys.
Is there any limitations on the use of that seed money?
There is.
There are limitations. And what we've used it in the past, we've tried to use it for pieces of equipment that the narcotics investigators need and ask for, that there's no way that we're going to fund them in the budget. Things that they use every day, surveillance, tracking materials, things like that. We usually try to fund those pieces of equipment with that. But, I've got to prioritize every day.
Yeah, is there any federal money coming in on joint investigations?
Yes. There's a steady flow of funds that come in through whether it's the state DAGs or start out with state through the federal. If cases do go federal, some of those that money goes through a bureaucracy. We might have a case in 2008 that gets adjudicated in 2010 that we get the money on in 2014. And that's actually one of those nightmare scenarios for the finance office, because they'll get a check or a wire transfer from the state or the feds, and there won't be any documentation of where it came from. You know, so those are the things that they are steady, but they are, we don't know until we get an email. We'll get an email saying funds are on the way of this amount, and then we try to keep up with those funds best we can.
Can that be used for any enforcement effort, or is there limitations of what you can use in sheriff?
There are limitations on what it can use. I mean, the essence of it is that those funds can be used to fight crime. But then there's other stipulations that go underneath that restrict us on what they could possibly use for. And we don't we don't maintain a lot of funds in that. You know, if we get up to $30,000 or $40,000 in that fund, then it's removed over time and drawn down over time. So we don't build up in that fund.
I was just wondering if we could use it, you know, for training or vehicles or vests or something like that.
The training piece, I'm not sure of. I've never looked into that. Most equipment, we can purchase it under, as long as it's going to be stipulated that it's going to be used for law enforcement.
Yeah, that I understand.
You know, I can't buy a car and then issue that to a
Oh, no.
you know, or anything.
I'm not raising those issues. I'm not raising the money goes outside of your department.
Sure.
I know it's limited to law enforcement. I was just wondering if, you know, if it benefits you that, you know, we get more ammunition, more training in firearms, more vests, vehicles, whatever you need.
Yes, sir.
Make sure that we're using the money in law enforcement.
Anything, Frank?
Charlie, I'm assuming that the 59 positions in the sheriff's department and the 20 in the detention center are all full.
We have 3 openings currently in detention. They've been pretty, two or three of those openings came within the last couple of months. Like I said, we've got four people that are in the background process to replacing those.
No, you keep going.
How about in the sheriff's department?
In the sheriff's office, we are full. We did have an open position that is slated to have the patrol deputy. That spot was open start on the 1st of June.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Chief. This time we'll take a 10, 15-minute break. All right, we're back in session. Mr. Manager, who's next? Emergency Services, am I correct?
Yes, sir, Emergency Medical Services, and we gave you, based on the actions that were taken last night by the board, we've updated your sheet, actually, in here, so there's a change. And what we did with that, there were some service expansions that were related to the potential acquisition later that we talked about in reducing in the recommended budget, we reduced the number of trucks in the Belhaven Pantig area to 1 from 2. And then there was a service expansion in there as we looked, because we had done the calculation that we felt like we could probably do it cheaper, or we knew we could do it cheaper based on the information we had. And we had shown that as a service expansion for you to consider, and there was a cost savings involved in it. And with that, there were some additional service expansions relating to supervision of the existing employees as you expand it, and also the position of a training officer and support staff for the billing piece and all the admin stuff that comes on that. So actually, based on your actions last night where you acquired and added in that, we've pulled that into this budget now and given you a new update on this. So I'd like to kind of go through that with you real quick.
Okay.
What this does, and of course John can speak anytime he'd like to, but what we've shown now in this, in the recommended budget, is that you've picked up the 8 EMT paramedics or intermediates. It's 4 and 4, so you've picked up the additional ambulance. So you see that additional ambulance in there now in the Belhaven area. And then in the service expansion, there was a recommendation for an operations training officer position, because now you've got to look after the training certifications of 27 employees. So we've got to have somebody who will teach those things, keep up with those records, and help on the operations side. The second piece of that because of the billing and all the extra information that's going on with that, you had a part-time admin assistant, an EMS specialist in there, that there was a recommendation in the service expansion to make that a full-time position to support that additional work that was going on. So that's been included, as well as the recommendation in the service expansion that you add a role of lead paramedic, so that you essentially have a shift supervisor who is managing, who's still a paramedic who's working at the time, but they're managing those 2 QRVs and those 2 ambulances that are out there, so you have a decent span of control of folks. So that's where you see the changes here, and if you look on page 130, you'll see how that all calculates out. We redid that this afternoon. You'll see where it says May 17th, revised, recommended, and come down to the bottom, you'll see that that total is now $1.7 million. You see there was an increase in expenses of $575,038. We eliminated the contract that you were going to have to pay of $350 that was included in the recommended budget. So that's now been eliminated, as well as the additional billing revenue that you'll pick up, as well as the Medicaid reimbursement. And out of that, we're showing that you, with all these changes, will have a net savings, a yearly net savings of $138,000. So we wanted to give you all that information and include all this now, since that action took place. We weren't anticipating, obviously, that to occur the way it did yesterday. But because of that, we've made these updates and we've put those forward to you as part of the recommended budget.
Okay, any questions? Okay, we can move on.
Page 133 is emergency management. Mr. Pack is here. We'll see that budget is at 223, which is actually below where he was in 14-15. Not sure any major, I mean, we reduced some things out of there, obviously, to get us down. Either John or I can answer any of those questions you may have about it.
What is the 13.5 under contract services for?
Part of that's copiers, and then there's some contract services for,
One of them is our part of HyperReach system.
A what?
The emergency alert phone system we use, HyperReach.
Right.
Our portion is $10,000 of the $15,000 that we pay a year for that system. The other $5,000 is paid out of the water department, and so $10,000 of that. We're just changing the name. It used to be under our communications line. Now we've dropped it out of communications and brought it, because it truly is contract services.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay.
Page 133 is forestry administration. This is the contract, 60% cost share you have with the state of North Carolina, North Carolina Department of Forestry. They submitted their budget, and we held that to a 2% based on, they actually gave us a little bigger request based on some additional things that they were asking for. We held it to a 2% based on what we understood maybe happening at the state level on their salary piece. So there may still be some negotiation going back and forth on that one, but that's what we were recommending. And of course, that's a cost share program you have with them. You pay 6% of that cost.
Questions? Okay.
Page 135 is other emergency services, and this is where you'll see the City of Washington EMS contract. This is where it's paid out of this. We pull in, as we talked about the other day, we pull in the EMS taxes in the old Ford Cherry Run area tax district. They move back in. We pull those out of that, transfer them into the general fund to pay that contract. And again, our recommendation in there is, as you'll see in that description, is to bump that tax from 4 cent to 4.5 cent. It's called the E02 Rescue District, and that will fully cover the EMS services in that district, and you will no longer be subsidizing it with general tax dollars. It was about, I think it was about $14,000 you were subsidizing, but that'll cover that. The White Oak ambulance piece was there. That is you can scratch that $350 out of there, because we have adjusted that on the other side that we talked about in EMS, so you can scratch that off. There is a continuing appropriation for the Sydney dive team at $10,000. That's exactly what they received. And there's also the appropriation, it's the constant appropriation over the years for the volunteer fire department fire safety house at $3,500. And then $34,000 for the medical examiner. You're required to fund that when they do autopsies and investigate suspicious deaths. And that number, you'll see the actual number was 35.3 in 14-15. We're projecting about 33.4. We bumped it just a little bit. It all depends upon how many suspicious deaths they have, unattended deaths that have to be autopsied. So that's where it may be up or down.
Questions? Okay.
Animal control is your last cost center in public safety. Bill Laster, who's the chief animal control officer, is here tonight. Their budget is $315,671, which is just a little bit above where they were actually in 14-15. I'm trying to think of any major items there. If you have any questions about that, they do have a service expansion in to do some things. There's a sign and an additional position, but that is in the service expansion to add. We ought to consider that. It's not in the continuation budget. So if you have any questions on that, please here. I'll be back.
Questions? Okay.
If you don't mind, since
Need a special revenue.
Since we have a few minutes, we can do the special revenues. That would be great. The special revenue fund, these are specific funds that are restricted. The first one is the 911 emergency fund. Those are funds that come through the state for PSAP funding. It is when you see that surcharge on your telephone bill. Those funds flow to the county through the 911 board and are required, they are restricted use for 911 services. So you'll see these all listed on page 140 and 141. You see the revenue side on 140, the expenditure side on 141. Under the 911 surcharge piece, you'll see that we're anticipating about $156,000 in this year's upcoming budget from the 911 surcharge. It comes through the state. They're looking for a grant from the state of a little over $1 million to help fund the expanded, the PSAP piece. And then we're projecting appropriating about $575,000 in fund balance from the 911 fund for a total of about $1.7 million. You'll see on the right side what that's all allocated to, whether it's 911 services, telephone software, or the hardware upgrades. There's some pretty substantial hardware upgrades they need to do. And again, these funds are restricted funds. You can't spend them for anything else. You have to spend them on 911 services. Several years ago, they expanded the use. Well, it's been an interesting piece with 911. It started out, as you may recall, there was about one sentence that read, you can use it to support 911 services. And of course, as things happened, there were some funds that got spent doing other things that may not have been what they should have been for. But instead of going after those particular counties or cities that use that money inappropriately, they decided to pass a law and change the funding and restrict it. And then they really jumped on it hard. And now they look at every bill that is submitted and they go back and cut stuff out of it. I mean, Vic and them have worked for the last couple of weeks on back and forth with the folks at the state about what is an allowable expense and what is not an allowable expense. They have given us a little flexibility where you can pay for some training. You can't pay for all training, but you can't pay for any personnel costs. No personnel costs are allowed under the 911 funds. And the really interesting piece of it is this was something that was done 2 years ago, I think. The association actually did it. They did a presentation to the legislative body, and they played a 911 tape, and it said, okay, the caller is calling 911. You can pay for that, and the way it's set up now, you can pay for that. The telecommunicator receives the call. You can pay for that. The telecommunicator enters everything, gets ready to dispatch the unit. I'm sorry, that you can't, and they cut the phone off. And they said, that's it. You can't pay for any more by 911 funds, the way the law is set up. So you have to pay locally to get that radio communication out to the responders. So there's a lot of work going on to try to fix those, but you have to remember that the way this whole thing was created on the 911 board, there are telcos that sit on the 911 board. They have more voting power than anybody on the 911 board, and there's some competition for those funds. And so it's a challenge. It's things that the association, both the NENA and APCO, the National Emergency Number Association, and the Association of Public safety communication officials, APCO and MENA, as well as the Association of County Commissioners, League of Municipalities are all working hard to be able to take those funds for 911 services and use them for 911 services so that you can get the call and the response that you need. Again, we're not talking about buying ambulances and fire trucks. We're talking about being able to dispatch the call and communicate with the people in the field to get the service that you need. So, sorry, that was my soapbox about 911.
I got a question, just so I understand this. The 911 total revenue is 1.737, is that correct?
That's what we're anticipating. Now, that's assuming that we're able to get the grant from
Okay,
the state.
I understand that.
Yes, sir.
Now, is that what it's going to be every year, or is this a one-time deal for setup and things like
That
that?
grant would be for a one-time piece.
Okay.
And they are setting some funds aside. Vic gave a great presentation the other night about that. They have set some funds aside for that. But when you look at, the Mecklenburgs of North Carolina and the Wakes of North Carolina who are requesting $5 and $6 million, $10 million out of that fund, it doesn't go very far.
No, I wouldn't think so. So we can anticipate this number to come down over the years?
More than likely. I mean, that number, if you take out the state grant, you'll consistently get the number that the surcharge money that comes in, that 156, it'll
Right.
fluctuate a little bit, and it's based upon the amount of expenditure you have that are eligible. So the other piece of that is, they do the state mandating, or no, they actually do it the state way. If you don't spend the money, then they take it away from you and they don't give it to you next year. So they're forcing you to spend every bit of the money, and otherwise they're going to take it away and not give you that money.
Spend the money, Vic.
But that sets up a bad precedent where you got folks who are saying, well, I got to spend this, but they audit every one of those.
That answered my question. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Where is this backup going to be? Is it going to be at a different location, or is it going to be somewhere in?
Yeah.
We've looked at several different options for the backup center, and first option that I came up with, the first option that was on the table was at the EOC. Well, when you look at the EOC, there's not enough space at the EOC to house the equipment and everything you need in the EOC to do the backup center. So then we had to back up and punt. We went over to, I talked to the folks at Chocowinity Fire Department. They've got some rooms they're not using, to see if we could work out a deal there to have the backup there. And then as I dug deeper and deeper into this thing, as I told y'all the other night, and saw that we were going to have a way to do this in 3 years without having to spend all this money, I started looking at other options. So I'm right now in the process of working out an MOU with Craven County. And we're going to work jointly and work together and transfer our 911 calls with a very minimal cost to do the backup PSAP. So if that doesn't get approved, we'll have to back up to the Chocowinity Fire Department deal. But I'm the one that called the 911 board out on this thing, and I'm going to hold their feet to the fire to stop this wasteful spending and allow us PSAPs to be able to do this in a way that we can do it at a minimal cost, and then go ahead and plan for the future with Next Gen 911, which is going to be much more beneficial to all of us.
Thank you. Anything further?
Just let me ask, if you do a MOU with Craven County, what's the term, a year terms? I mean, what are the terms? Well, certain counties, they can fall out doing some times now.
Right. I got a great working relationship with Stanley Kite. He's Emergency Management Director of Craven County. I met the other day with Stanley, their IT people. We had the communication companies that we both use the same company.
So it's a long-term marriage.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they've got the same situation right now with New Bern PD. So they're doing the same thing for New Bern PD for themselves. So we're going to kind of do the same thing. It'll basically give them a double backup, if you will, in case something happened with their system where they couldn't go to New Bern PD, a flood or what have you.
Did you talk to any other counties like Pitt or Martin?
The problem is, yes, I've been over and visited with Pitt County. The problem with Pitt County is Pitt County's not using the Viper radio system. Using the Viper network through the State Highway Patrol is going to allow us to save a lot of money without having to put in microwaves to link radios together and all that stuff. Because all that stuff's coming with next gen. We don't need to spend unnecessary money. The Martin County doesn't have the seating capacity to handle this. Washington County doesn't. Hyde's going to Dare County, and Pamlico County doesn't have the seating capacity to handle this. One of the things they wanted you to do was to mirror images in the beginning, exactly what you're doing. Well, now they figured out they were going to run out of money, they're pulling the reins back. And then the next thing they wanted you to do was to still were holding your feet to the fires. If you've got 4 positions, they want you to go be backed up by a center that's got 4 positions to be able to put warm bodies in. Well, I've called them on that. Craven's got 2 positions, with a 3rd one that will possibly be up by the time we get the backup up and running. So I've got them saying yes right now to using those 2 to 3 positions in an agreement that I'll send personnel to Craven County for a hurricane or snowstorm, and we'll have people sitting in their center. So we'll be help. What they'll get in return is they'll have additional people sitting in their comm center during a disaster, and we'll have people sitting there ready to run a backup in case ours fails. So it's a win-win for both of us.
Thanks.
Okay.
The next piece you have there is the unauthorized substance tax, and the money coming in on that side, and the miscellaneous income that goes into that, which are small judgments against folks that come back into that. Those funds are used, they're seized funds. You'll see it's projected $15,500 for use of those restricted funds for some of those things that Charlie was talking about earlier. Then further down, you'll see the fire tax piece coming in and going back out. And then you'll see the EMS piece coming in and going back out. And we've got one correction we found right then on the Bath Township piece, Bath community piece. We got to fix that. They should actually be 383, 384 instead of 82,000.
What'd you say the number was?
383, 384 on the left side of the page, and then on the right side of the page, it'll be Bath community to Bath contribution to the general fund. Like you see down at the bottom where it says EMS Pantega Township to general fund, you'll see it'll be that same amount, 383, 384. We'll fix those two and give them to you. Sorry, we just caught that.
It really ought to change that to Bath Township instead of Bath Community.
And we can, we tried to put some names in with them because historically it's just said rescue ER2, ER4. I mean, don't they all know that's what we did to make sure we wrote them down.
Now, is this a real plus to our budget of $300,000? Shake your head the right way.
I already had it in the general fund as revenue.
Okay.
It's
You
just
just
for
didn't have it
last
here.
year.
It flows in, flows back out.
We're going to show collecting the revenue in the special revenue fund, and then an expense where it goes to the general fund, and then it's recognized in the general fund.
Correct.
On the, you go out to Old Ford area out there, who received the third-party payments out there? Do we get it, or does the city of Washington?
City of Washington does.
Do you know how many calls?
I don't know. John can pull those. He can tell you. He may know off the top of his head.
I mean, is it
I think he told
500?
me one time.
534 calls.
534 calls?
It's a pile of them.
Because you asked that question, and I asked him that question.
I was
That's why he's got it. I couldn't remember it.
And me and Vic sat down and we went through address by address, 534 calls.
Okay.
And then on page 143, you see the information about the emergency telephone system and what it functions does, and then what their anticipated budget and expenditure is. That matches. That ties back to the $1.7 million. So that's the detail on it.
Okay. All right, that's it for today.
Yes, sir.
And so Thursday, we have our water, solid waste. We'll finish all of this and then we start the expansion Thursday, you gonna?
Well, actually, what I thought you might want to do, since, and again, that was my fault, and I forgot we we didn't have as many enterprise funds as I'm used to. So it would give us an opportunity. I think we'll be able to move fairly quickly through the water piece and the solid waste piece. And then that gives you some time to discuss where you are so far before you get into the expansion side.
Okay.
If you'd like to. It's totally.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Could I just make a statement as it related to the Pantica recreational money? I think it's like 4,000 and some change. I'd like to see us move that over to the Bath. Pantica has absolutely, to my knowledge, no recreation activities.
Yeah, dude, that old high school, they don't have a baseball team or anything, but they use their funds in that playground behind the city hall building.
So you know for a fact that the town is spending that money over there for recreation?
Well, it wasn't at one time, no, I don't know it for a fact, but I know that they put some playground equipment over there behind, either with it around there, Swamp Road, ain't it? Yeah, Swamp Road. They did do that, and before we do that, I called the mayor, because he was talking one time about putting some more playground equipment over there in that area.
I'll check. I'll call him.
Mr. What's his name?
The mayor?
Yeah.
Stuart Ricks.
Yeah.
Anything further? All right, we'll adjourn until Thursday.